All right, Wiz, I'm going to need your help on this one, okay? Now, one of the biggest debates that hip-hop has had over the years is how much involvement did Puerto Ricans have in the creation of hip-hop? Now, you know, Fat Joe had came out and he said it was 50-50, and he received a lot of backlash for that, right? I interviewed your man K-Born, and he said you got to break it down into the elements. He said Puerto Ricans were mainly into breakdancing and graffiti, but on the DJ and rapping side, it was mainly blacks. Man, roll the clip.
Yeah, but Fat Joe was talking about rhyming. I mean, Fat Joe is talking about, like, Fat Joe them is just put everything into a gumbo soup. So that's why Fat Joe was saying, yo, now it was Spanish people there, Spanish people there, Spanish people there. It was Spanish people there, Fat Joe. But it was more, the Spanish people was breakdancing, Fat Joe. Or the Spanish people was doing graffiti. The majority of the rappers was African-American. The DJs was African-American. You had Charlie Chase and probably like one or two more Latin DJs. That was it. That was the end of that. You know what I'm saying? That was the end of that. Then later on, like, Doo-Wop came, because Doo-Wop was a kid. That's one of my brothers. You know, Doo-Wop wasn't DJing at that time. So he was, you know, it was only like, Kid Capri wasn't DJing at that time. Kid Capri, one of my brothers, grew up with me. Kid Capri wasn't DJing at that time.
So when people are having this conversation, they need to be more specific about all the different elements of hip hop, right?
Yeah.
Because
you just can't say hip hop because we wasn't taking hip hop as one thing. It's elements of hip hop. And in certain elements, you know, it was always predominantly Latin when it came to graffiti and predominantly Latin when it came to breakdancing.
Okay. I can only speak from my perspective, and I could speak from the research that I've recently done because I didn't know. You know, I had to clear that up myself because growing up, like I said, I was introduced to hip hop through b-boying and breakdancing, and I was around a lot of Latinos. You know, at that time in '77, the Latinos was dominating the b-boy aspect of hip hop. Okay, that's what we got established. Now, I had to go back after Fat Joe made that statement. I had to go back and do my own research. What happened before '77? Because, you know, what happened in '73? What happened in '74? Who was there in '75? I had to find that out because when I did get into hip hop, when my first night of going to that Roosevelt High School jam, I'll never forget it. It wasn't no Latinos there. It was mainly a black orientated crowd there. I didn't recall seeing any Latinos to be. It was just a black thing. It was a black thing. So I felt privileged because I'm just coming from the Latino side because my mom is Latino as well. Her last name was Rojas. So I grew up with
that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So she's Puerto Rican, or
she has her mom's she's Puerto Rican, but her mom, she didn't speak it. She grew up with the black generation more than her Latino generation. So she didn't speak the language.
Also, she was half.
Right. Well, yeah. I'm gonna put it to you like this: my grandmother was Spanish. My grandfather was Black American. So my mother was their child. So she had a black father and a Spanish mother. So my mother married my father, who was a black man, and my mother continued her Spanish heritage. But when she got married, she changed her name from Rojas to Lockett. So that runs off in my DNA as well. So I was able to grow up with my Latino brothers and sisters during the B-boy time. And that's where I was introduced to hip hop. But later on, as I evolved into picking up a microphone and getting onto the mic, I learned that there was a whole nother aspect to hip hop just besides the breakdancing or what I had grown up with. There was rhyming and DJing and you know, all kind of other stuff from a whole nother aspect. So I melted right into that. I wasn't no separation at that time in our minds. You know, the way we are debating about this topic today, back in those days, there was really no separation for me in my mind because I had grown up with the Latino brothers and sisters and now was mingling with the black brothers and sisters. So it wasn't no separation for me. It was all the same to me, but I was able to experience both sides of the fence.
But back in the day in New York, though, they were almost viewed as the same too, or very close, right? Like blacks and Latinos.
Yeah, well, that's a very sensitive topic because I got a lot of Latino brothers and sisters who I love, and I got a lot of FBA, Foundational Black Americans, that I love too, and grew up with them. So I don't want to offend nobody, but I'm just going to speak the truth from my experience. Cass had made a statement on Vlad saying that Latinos didn't play a big part in hip hop, that maybe one or two of them, and that they were pretty much listening to merengue and salsa while we was listening to hip hop and turntables in the park. And so after that comment, I said, okay, all right. Then years after that, Fat Joe comes out with the comment about Latinos
50-50.
being 50% of the creation of hip hop, which I totally disagreed with. I totally disagreed with that because when we talking creation or we talking contribution, this is where we get it twisted at. From my experience.
Semantics plays the real, because are you talking about at the very beginning, or are you talking about like the from the very creation, or are you talking about contributions over the years when hip hop started to go into more elements, started to go into like I was having this conversation with one of my friends too, and I was like, yeah, you got to be very careful with the word selection. What are you specifically saying?
Correct. And that's what I think a lot of people who are not selective with their wording, got like Fat Joe got misconstrued it. Because first of all, I was there and Fat Joe wasn't. See, I was there and Fat Joe wasn't there when I was there. So for him to make that statement, I kind of looked at the adolescence in it, and I understand that, it's about time for that to happen, but it wasn't accurate. And, I was very offended when Fat Joe made that statement because, when we're talking about the creativity, we're not talking about the contribution. And that's what, again, like the wordplay, I felt that, he was playing with the words. And if he didn't know and understand, but I feel like he meant what he said. He really felt in the creation aspect of hip hop, Latinos contributed just as much as FBA, Foundational Black Americans. And I didn't see it that way. I didn't see him as the creating, but I see them as the contributors as well.
Got you. Okay. But Joe was born in 1970. So can you really say that he wasn't there? I guess
you said he was born in 1970. He wasn't when he was born in 1970. He was a baby.
Right.
He was a baby in 1970.
Unless he was coming out at like 5 years old, like to really be a part of everything. I get you, yeah.
So in 1980, he was only 10.
Right.
So if he was born in 70, by 1980, he was 10 years old.
Right.
And hip hop was already here.
Yeah.
So how can he make a statement like that when he was a baby when hip hop was being evolved? We're dealing with numbers.
What about the argument that people say that hip hop really comes from, Jamaica and from the Caribbean and everything? And what do you think about all of that?
First of all, I don't like to speak about an opinion, or I don't like to make assumptions. I don't speak like that. I speak with facts. So the answer to that question is, if you do your research, you'll find out that that's not true. You'll find out that Busta Rhymes making that statement and those allegations, and Fat Joe making those statements and allegations at the same time, those statements is not accurate at all. They're not accurate at all. In fact, to be honest with you, Jamaica copied Americans. Their music, their whole thing was what they've learned from Americans. And they took it to Jamaica and brought it back. So it's like, if we do the research on these things, we don't have to have an opinion because everybody got one. But if you do your research, you'll see that that's not true at all. That's not, in fact, the Jamaicans copied Americans. They used to remake our great legendary black artists' music over. They copied our stuff. They remade our songs over in their reggaeton stuff. We wasn't copying their stuff. They came in was learning from Americans, and that's how they were able to, grow and develop the way they've grown and developed in their culture.